Captain's Log, Episode 59. This week's episode of the Beer Vengers podcast is sponsored by the Beer and Cheese Collective, located at 35-11 Ditmars Boulevard in Astoria, Queens. Now open 7 days a week. More in the mood for wine than beer? They've got you covered with their new wine list, complete with cheese pairings. Enjoy their eclectic array of craft beer, artisanal cheeses, and specialty grocery items at the Beer and Cheese Collective. New name, same great place. This week, Captain of the Beer Wonder welcomes special guest beer venture to be Brian Hathaway of Brewvana, City Brew Tours, and the Brews Less Traveled podcast. This show has everything. Unique beer pours, a fascinating new origin story, an extended journey through the Pittsburgh beer scene, the sacred naming ritual, and even musings on something called Baja Blast. I'm going to have to get Nutpool to explain that one to me. If you make it to the end and find yourself craving more of this combination, be sure to check out the May episodes of the Brews Less Traveled podcast, where the Beer Wonder and I will be joining Brian as his guests. Remember to like, star, and subscribe whenever that feels appropriate. And send us your emails at thebeervengers@gmail.com if you have any questions, suggestions, or if you just like hearing us talk about you on the show. And now, without further ado, please enjoy episode 59, Getting Funky with Kid OBK.
Well, we're the beer vengers, beer vengers, beer vengers.
We're the Beer Vengers.
Welcome to the Beercast, everyone. Coming to you from an undisclosed location in Astoria, Queens, I am Captain Porter Brown Stout.
And coming to you from an undisclosed location in the County of Kings, it is I, the Beer Wonder!
And we are the Beer Vengers. Very nice. Very nice. That was it's always different and always the same.
Crackled a little at the end.
It did, yeah. That's I was going to say that's part of what's great about being live, even though we're recorded, but it's live while we're doing it, so that's all that really matters. Welcome to the Beercast. It's wonderful to have all of you here. Both are you, Beer Wonder, and you listening out there. And we've got a lot of fun stuff coming up on the episode this week. But what I'm especially excited about is we have a new beer venger to be, and that is from Brews Less Traveled and City Brew Tours and Brewvana, which are all part of the same thing. But he's from all of them. Welcome our special guest beer venger, Brian Hathaway.
Woohoo!
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, hopefully I can live up to the name of Brews Less Traveled and Brewvana well, and not embarrass myself too much, and not ruin this.
And trust me, we've been taking care of that for the last couple months, so don't worry about that on your shoulders.
Exactly, and if you do that, we're in that with you, since we're going to be spending the entire next month with you on Brews Less Traveled.
Yeah, spoiler alert. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Well, we'll have to get to.
Should I bury that a little bit? We did mention it on last week's show.
Yeah,
the spoiler would be if we said what city is in. We'll find out. You can let us know if that's if we can mention that for the day this is being released. But we'll get to that. We've got a lot to get. Actually, I don't know why I'm still even talking, because we're all sitting here with empty glasses. So obviously, it's time that we all need to get to the pours.
Naturally. I just saw Brian flipped his upside down just to prove to us that he had not pre-gamed our time together.
There was a little bit of water left from my glass rinse in that, so I just dumped.
So it's a freshly cleaned glass.
Yes, it's very
Very good. Well, since he does have that freshly cleaned glass, it should. How order do we? Beer Wonder, help me out here.
Captain, you were so close.
Oh yeah,
you were so close. I heard you almost getting there, and then you pulled back. And I just need you to commit. So, Captain, why don't you tell us who should go first?
Well, since you're asking me to, I will. I think the reason that I was giving pause is because I felt like I was doing your job. Because the first person who really should pour their beer is our guest, because it would only be polite.
Very true.
So, Brian, what do you have for us today?
So I have a German-style Pilsner called Common People from Necromancer Brewing Company, kind of a newer brewery here in Pittsburgh. Have opened up in the past year or so here. Opened one of the pandemic breweries opened up, and they're doing some really cool beers. So,
Excellent. Digging the can art already. It was a good sounding crack.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice can
crispy crack. Hopefully,
exactly.
For a nice crispy Pilsner.
One would hope. It looks pretty golden, pretty straw there. Oh, aggressive head, it looks like.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And hold that up a little higher. Oh, very nice.
Very beautiful. Oh, and it's in a lovely glass. Is that for any shout outs on the glass for those who will be checking the Instagram?
Absolutely. This is a glass from another new Pittsburgh brewery called Trace. And the people at Trace and Necromancer are actually really good friends and have done a couple collabs together and or kindred spirits, some would say.
Well, very good. All right.
Cheers.
Well, since I seem to be in charge now.
Yeah.
Beer Wonder, I think I want you to go next.
Oh, wow. Well, that's very kind of you, Captain, because to the shock of literally no one, I happen to have a...
Sponsored pour.
A sponsored pour, you say?
Yes. Shock, right?
That would be from our sponsor, the Beer and Cheese Collective at 35-11 Ditmars in Astoria, Queens.
Mm-hmm.
Now open 7 days a week. Yeah.
Grab your beer and cheese there. Well, and they're coming in local for me, although they did jump over one river, because the beer I have today is not from the borough of Queens. It is from the borough of Manhattan, from the only Manhattan brewery we currently have. Well, I know, it's questionable.
There's still that which ails you. I mean, honestly, I just feel like
Yes.
Dave Lopez would get on us if we didn't give them their props.
Fair, very true. But we will shout out, and they are listing on their can that they're not only in Manhattan, but they're in the Bronx. It is our buddies over at Torch and Crown.
Oh, of course.
And I have their Comet Belgian Golden Strong Ale. So
Ooh.
I have prepared myself today. It's coming in at just a casual 8%. So
Excellent.
it's gonna. I'm glad it's actual drinking time on a Thursday. So let's see how this turns out.
Beautiful
All
crack
right.
indeed.
Here we go.
Watch that cascade down there. Oh, yeah, that is golden for sure.
Yeah, nice caramel color. And very little head on this one.
Yeah.
I know it looks like it's got kind of more of a medium body, but excited to see how this one turns out.
Very good.
All right. Captain, do your thing.
Oh, well, it's my turn. All right. Well, I'm gonna, to the shock of exactly no one. Again, I also have a
Sponsored pour.
tried a sponsored pour from the Beer and Cheese Collective. This is one, but what will be surprising to you is I am drinking an out of character beer tonight from our friends at Barrier. So local, but not quite as local as yours.
Mm-hmm.
In conjunction with our friends at Other Half, I have Forbidden Dreams,
Oh my.
which is a double dry hopped IPA.
The Captain is drinking an IPA.
It just looks so delicious. Well, if I'm gonna,
This is shocking.
If I'm gonna drink an IPA, I should drink one from Other Half, or at least half
That's
from Other
probably
Half,
true.
I should say.
Yeah.
And this is not that I'm trying to best you because I wasn't sure which one you were having, but this is at an 8.2%.
Oh.
Oh.
All right, there we go.
So Brian's taking it easy. This
Ooh, very
is making
foamy
it
right
seem-
out of the gate here.
I
There
know.
we
I
are.
feel like I should have got a stronger beer.
That's all right.
Just
You'll
drinking
help us-
Pilsner over here.
You'll
look
be
at
the
that
one-
head.
I know, it's beautiful. It's aggressive, and it's got that good haze coming through,
Right.
which is what you'd expect from something from Other Half.
Very good.
So, all right.
All right, well, now that we have our beers, I think it's time. Gentlemen, cheers.
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 I think I'm going to have to let that head subside a little bit more before I get a real strong sense of what that is. But what I got, it's very good.
Oh, lovely. Well, so, Brian, we need the crispy report from Pittsburgh.
Absolutely.
How's this one stacking up?
Nice and crispy. Very nice and crispy. But that's the end of the beer. Let's talk about the start of the beer.
Okay.
Nice malty aroma, like classic Pilsner aroma. It's not like super hoppy like some modern examples or like an Italian Pilsner.
Sure.
Very much a German Pilsner with like the rounded edges. I always think of the difference between a German Pilsner and a Czech Pilsner is German has like rounded edges. Czech's a little bit more harsh on there. Just a lovely drinking beer. Nice bready character through the middle. A nice crisp finish. There's maybe a little fruitiness from hops or a fermentation character. But nice. It does say floral hops. So yeah, it's probably coming from that. And it's nice. They have pairing recommendations right on the can, which I like.
How nice.
They recommend to pair it with white cheddar, seared scallops, schnitzel, or chocolate croissants. That's a curveball right there.
Yeah,
Now,
I was
Brian-
not expecting that.
Brian, is this typical from this brewery? I assume you've been there. This is not your first beer from there, or whether it's even your first version of this beer from there. Do you see this on their cans a lot?
I have seen this on their cans. This is actually the first beer that I've purchased from there. I always,
it is, okay.
I mooch beers off of my dad and my brother on the weekend, and they've had some Necromancer in their fridge that I've taken. But I went out and bought this specifically to be on this wonderful podcast here. I wanted to get out to Necromancer. They're 10-minute drive up the road from me, so nice and close. I haven't been there myself yet, so this was nice to try out for this first time on this podcast. And yeah, they definitely have a focus on trying to resurrect old styles, hence the name Necromancer. And I think along with that, they want to give it an approachability. And I think an easy way to have that approachability is to have those food pairings on there. And if they throw some wild style out there, people are like, well, what's some direction with this? It's like, hey, drink it with this.
I love that they choose that name Necromancer, but actually have a much more benign approach towards it. Because a few weeks ago we had that one from Nightmare, and they're all about naming their beers after various tortures,
Ways to die.
So Necromancers, we're bringing things back from the dead in a good way.
Yeah, and even like the skulls on there aren't like too morbid or anything. I feel like they're like a bunch of punk characters.
Exactly. And they're iridescent, so really they're just shining the light forward back into the world, right?
Yeah, it makes me think of the whole the Day of the Dead thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, this beer is a little deadly. I'll be honest. The alcohol is pretty obvious on this guy here, but I really kind of loved this beer because it is a great Belgian style. It's a very traditional strong ale, and the name Comet actually has a Belgian story. It's from a famous escape line that was operated in Belgium from 1941 to 1944 during the Second World War, and they had a nurse who was nursing Allied soldiers and pilots that were shot down behind enemy lines, and then getting them to sort of safer territories. So the beer is made in honor of them. And it's definitely got that like candy nose to it. And there's a good amount of brown sugar. And you might even say that there is a little bit of...
There's nutmeg in here.
You might say that. It's distinctly possible. You might say that.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's got that really good finish. It does have sort of a heavier body, so it's not really hot. It's like there's a heaviness, so it's going to slow down a little bit, but a good dry finish is just a really lovely example of the style. I will probably not last long in my coherence if I drink this too quickly, so I'm going to slow myself down.
That's all right. It's not a race, as Brian likes to say on his show. There's no time limit. There's no need to wrap this up any sooner than we need to. It's interesting. This one, there is not a lot of information on the can, so I had to go to Beer Advocate. But here's what they have. This is pretty nuts and bolts here. It's double dry hop with Eldorado, Mosaic, Racao. Am I pronouncing that right?
I never know with that one.
Oh, but you've seen it before. Racao and Comet with plenty of oats and a touch of milk sugar. I definitely taste some of that lactose mouthfeel in there. I mean, the hoppiness is not shy. It's definitely there on the first taste, but it's got a really nice smooth finish. It's delicious.
It's a good one.
And
Well,
because you can see the head finally subsided, so I can really get a full understanding of this one. But it's kind of funny that your beer was so casual with its head, and this one was aggressive with its head. But it's very, very good. That way, I know it's fresh.
That's true. It's the law of averages, Captain. Now,
although I'm sure yours is fresh too.
Yes, well, it came just from our dear friends at the Beer and Cheese Collective, so of course they always have fresh beers there. So you should swing by the next time you want a fresh one. But now, Brian, I must say that was one of the most beautiful descriptions of a beer that I have heard in a bit. And I'm curious. You talk about beer professionally. We've teased this idea of this podcast that you do. Can you tell the fine people what exactly is Brews Less Traveled all about?
So, Brews Less Traveled is a podcast exploring the best uncharted craft beer cities across America. Basically, I get to travel to different cities, whether it's Omaha, Nebraska, Des Moines, Iowa, or screw it, the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and go to these beer scenes that are really great, but may not be on the map as much as somewhere like Philly, New York City, Boston, Portland, Denver, the kind of hot beer markets. Sure. And we go and we find these breweries. We get them to sell us some beer, and then we put those beers in craft beer club subscription kits and send those out to people on a monthly basis, and they can get those and join us while we drink the beers and talk to people from the breweries and have a good time. And if they don't want to go to that extent, they can just listen to the podcast, and we have a good time that way too. So
yeah, I know. I had a good time on that before you joined it. Was it January, February you started hosting it?
I started in February. I believe you co-hosted what, in December?
In December, and Beer Wonder a little bit before, or you could say we hosted it, or our alter egos hosted it.
That's true.
You said you wanted us on for the Twin Cities, and so I'm still not sure if you want which version of us you want on there, but we can talk about that later. But the people who listen to Brews Less Traveled are some of the few people who have actually heard our real names already.
Yes, exactly. If you want to know the secrets of the Beer Vengerdom, that's the place to look.
Yeah.
Clearly. So now you've traveled to a couple different cities. Which ones have you actually had the chance to visit with Brews Less Traveled?
Omaha, Des Moines, a city to yet be named, and Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, there's still secrets in the pipeline.
There are secrets. And I will be traveling in 3 weeks to the next two cities on the docket.
Oh,
so.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Now, when you travel, how long are you there? Are you there for like a week? Do you meet all these people in the span of 3 days? What's that look like?
So it was very different for both trips that I did. I did Des Moines, Omaha, and the secret city to be named, all on the same trip. And I spent a little over a day in each of those cities, and that was not enough time. I felt like I was running around a little too much. I didn't really get like a feel for the city, which I feel like is an important part of the show, is to be able to capture that feel and kind of describe what that beer scene is like, which, it's kind of crazy to say because I'm only going to go to 4 or 5 breweries. So it's just representative of those 4 or 5 breweries. But still. And then when I went to Minneapolis, St. Paul, I spent 3 days there, 2.5 days there. And that was ample time, if not I don't want to say too much time. I had an exceptional time in those cities. Like, I fell in love with Minneapolis and St. Paul, and I cannot wait to share those beers with people and talk about those cities. That's actually your hometown, isn't it?
That is where I was born. Yes, I was born in Minneapolis.
Is that secret information? Is the Beer Wonder from Minneapolis, or
no? I think, if I'm not mistaken, I broadcast once. We did an episode from Minneapolis.
You were technically in Wisconsin.
That's true. I was over in Wisconsin.
You were visiting your Minneapolis family, but
my Minneapolis family,
your Minnesota family.
Yeah. But I have had a few Minnesota beers on the Beercast here, and so I'll be excited to see what breweries we'll be highlighting. I know that my father listens along. Hi, Dad. And so he will probably be going and drinking along with us on this adventure from the Twin Cities, so we can get some on-the-ground reporting from him as well.
And since we're talking about hometowns, I would be remiss, since you're looking, your hat that keeps reminding me, because you're wearing the Cincinnati hat from that was the very first Brews Less Traveled city, which is about an hour south of where I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. After I listened to the Brews Less Traveled, I just happened to be visiting my dad shortly thereafter, and there was a whole thing with the way airports are during COVID, and I couldn't fly directly to Dayton, so I kept flying directly to Cincinnati. And my dad was like picking out places, listening to that, saying, "Oh, we should go visit 50 West. We should go visit Listerman's," as part of like dropping me off and picking me up from the airport. So it was really great to be able. It's funny because I grew up there, just an hour from Cincinnati, and I learned stuff about them and their beer scene that I never knew. Granted, I didn't spend many years there when I was legal to drink, but
I was actually just in Cincinnati 2 weeks ago.
Oh, cool.
Shooting a little something that I don't know how much I can talk about, but it does kind of involve Bruvana and Brews Less Traveled and another pretty cool brand out there. And it was the first time I had been to Cincinnati when I was of drinking age, and I was blown away. It was so great. 50 West is such a cool place. If anybody's ever out there, get to 50 West. They have volleyball courts. They have like 7 or 8 volleyball courts on their property outside. They have pickleball courts. They have tournaments.
It's dog friendly too. Lots of dogs there.
Yeah. But a great city, and very cool beer history city, because they have like old lagering caves. Their history goes back to the mid 1800s, and there's a lot of cool stories in that city.
And it's right off of a bike trail.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun too.
That also doesn't hurt. Don't drink too many, I guess, before you get on the bike.
It's funny talking about how we can't talk about that one city. We can't talk about what you were filming there. I immediately remember that Twin Peaks. There was a famous dream sequence where someone was speaking backwards, and one of the things that he said was, "She's filled with secrets." I can't imitate the backwards talking, but that's what I'm thinking. Brian's filled with secrets. And
yes.
Glad to hear what those are. But it's not all about secrets.
It's not.
I think it's we've been enjoying these beers. We've been learning a little bit about Brews Less Traveled, but I want to know a little more about Brian, because it is his first time ever on the show, and we only know so much about him. So I think perhaps it might be time for his origin story.
We triggered the wandering Huck.
We did. Yeah, that's right. It's time for the origin story of Brian Hathaway, how he became to be the beer drinker personally and professionally, everything that defines him in that realm. When did your journey with beer start, either in a subtle or very profound way, whichever version of that you want to tell?
Well, it's probably in a profound way. It's probably the best way to start, because I can remember back to the day I turned 21. The first beer I had was Guinness, so I always had like an interest in having like better quality beer.
Okay.
But what really clicked for me was we would vacation to South Carolina. We would fill up the fridge with local beers and just beers that we could get there that we couldn't get back in my hometown of Pittsburgh. And one time I went down there, my dad had read like an article in Men's Health or something talking about IPAs and beer, especially beer in cans, craft beer in cans. Ooh,
shock.
This mysterious thing back in 2008, 2009, something like that.
Okay, so
this
just kind of the beginning of it, yeah.
Yeah. It had to have been 2010, actually, because that's when I would have turned 21. So, yeah, 2010, 2011, somewhere around there. Craft beer isn't too big. We go down to Hilton Head, South Carolina. My dad picks up 3 beers. Avery IPA, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, and Oscar Blues Dale's Pale Ale.
Wow.
Good choices.
I had them get me Guinness. I drank the Guinness, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to drink this. This will be fine. And one night, my brother and I decided to sneak down to the beach by ourselves, maybe to do some nefarious things that we didn't want our parents, get into some trouble.
Relatively nefarious, sure.
Yeah, I was going to say get into like kid trouble, but I realized I'm telling a story about me as a 21-year-old, so it wasn't just necessarily kid trouble.
Well, sure, but nothing like nefarious, meaning just stuff. Sometimes just what your parents you want to do around your parents isn't always the biggest definition of nefarious. But nefarious makes it sound more exciting for sure, so please go on with your nefarious story.
And I just decided to take 2 Dale's Pale Ales. Just for some reason. I think I actually had Guinness bottles for some reason, and I didn't want to take the bottles down to the beach. So I was like, let me grab 2 of these cans. Let me grab 2 of these IPAs in cans. That was even quite the novel thing then. And took them down there, and cracking those beers and having them on the beach was just an awakening of, like, holy crap, this is what beer could taste like. Just the explosion of hops in there. And I've always been somebody that can deal with bitterness. I drink my coffee black. I don't mind bitterness. So the bitterness didn't, like, turn me off like I think it does with a lot of people with, like, a very hoppy beer like Dale's Pale Ale.
Okay.
And I was just like, this is it. I want more of this. How can we find more of this? And it just
Your
was
journey
all,
had begun.
Yeah. Yes, the journey had begun. I was a convert then, and have been a craft beer, some would say snob, ever since then.
Well, we try not to use the S word around here anymore because it's really because I like the word aficionado, I like the word nerd, I like geek. A snob connotes someone who looks down on people who don't share what they have. A nerd or a geek says, "Hey, I've got this wonderful thing. Let me explain it to you. Let me bring you into my world."
Yeah.
So now I'm just curious, since the statute of limitations is over for this for now. So was your first legal beer your first actual beer?
Oh God, no. Oh God.
Oh, okay.
No, I was a
Good work.
troublemaker.
So did you spend some time with garbage beer too?
Yeah, and I never liked it. Like, I don't know, drinking when I was younger wasn't my forte. Like, that's not how I would like to adulterate my brain. So, like, I never really liked drinking alcohol when my friends would drink that and bring that to parties, and people would bring beer, and I was like, this is more my speed of kind of, like, slowly getting into a buzz.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, this tastes awful. My friends would all buy this beer around here called American, which is made by the Pittsburgh Brewing Company. They make Iron City Light, kind of the signature trash beer of Pittsburgh. Well, American is the trash beer made by the Trash Beer Brewery.
Wow.
I say trash beer lovingly. I like Iron City. I have Iron City in my fridge downstairs. I questioned bringing it on the podcast, but
we would have accepted it. But go ahead.
I was always like, I don't like the taste of this. Like, why do people like this? It's so thin and corny, and like I just didn't like it. And then I had a Newcastle actually first, and that was like, oh, this is good. This is interesting, caramely, malty. And then I stepped up to Guinness, and then eventually, found my way into craft, and have not looked back. I actually have turned back since, and will often buy hams in Iron City these days.
Yeah.
So
For nostalgic pour.
yeah.
It's funny as far as for me. I'm always envious of people who came of age in the last decade and a half, because you don't have to waste as much time with shitty beer. Because some of your early experiences are similar to some of my early experience, not the Dale's Pale Ale and that sort of thing, but I enjoyed Guinness okay at first, but once I tried Newcastle, that was my first choice for a very long time, for probably my mid-20s all up to around mid-30s, not quite the mid-30s, but yeah, for like quite a while. Like, if I couldn't always find it, so it was Newcastle first, Bass second, and then everything changed.
All the dark beers for you, Captain. That's always how it goes.
Well, Bass isn't quite that dark.
No, that's fair.
But I just Guinness. Guinness was always, I always enjoyed it occasionally, but the other it's the stouts that came later that really. Anyway, but this isn't my origin story. This is Brian's.
Well, Brian, I was curious because you started drinking and you got into sort of craft beer, but I know that your relationship with beer has gone much further than that. Now, because you not only have a personal relationship with beer, but also a professional relationship with beer. So, talk a little bit about how that happened.
Yeah, how that evolved.
Yeah. So, liked beer, was interested in it. Really not too long after getting into like good craft beer, I found my way into homebrewing. I actually went to a vineyard in Arizona. We were on vacation in Arizona. We went to actually the Singer of Tools vineyard. I don't know. Is my Tool poster Yeah, it's still behind me
Singer
there.
of Tolls. All right.
Yeah, so Maynard James Keenan, the lead singer of Tool, one of the founders, also started a vineyard in Arizona. And
Cool.
you don't think of American winemaking originating out of Arizona, let alone the desert area of Arizona. So that was kind of
a
inspiring.
lot of irrigation needed for that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, not to. I guess we're just going to delve into Arizona. There's a part of Arizona that's called the Verde Valley. That's near Sedona, Arizona, a popular vacation spot, and it is extremely lush, green, very rich, growing area. So it is tempered to grow grapes, but it's just that a lot of people make the assumption like I'm not going to go and start a vineyard in the desert. Anyways, this was super, super inspiring to see this guy making grapes in the desert, making wine in the desert, growing grapes in the desert, building this other brand outside of this thing that he was so well known for. And I asked for a winemaking kit for Christmas. And if you've ever made wine at home, it is very, very simplified. You take the grape juice, you add it to a bucket, you put some water in, you add some yeast, and you ferment it. And then you put potassium metabisulfite in to stop the fermentation, you condition it, you bottle it, and then that's the end of the process. And you really don't have a ton of control over it. And then the same place that sold wine equipment also sold beer making kits. And I was like, that seems like more my speed. I got into that instead, transitioned from winemaking into beer making, and from then on I was just full on nerd into craft beer world. I bought John Palmer's How to Brew. I brought every book I could get my hands on after that. I bugged every home brewer and brewer I could get in contact with, and that eventually led me to working professionally adjacent with beer nowadays. So,
What was your first gig in beer?
Oh, so I started as a assistant manager of a local beer bar here called Caliente. Before my gig with beer and my involvement in beer and human resources is what I really do for the company.
Yeah.
I was in restaurants, and I did restaurants for 10 years and eventually found a real niche in pizza. And a friend that I had worked with earlier in my pizza career was opening up a pizza and craft beer focused bar called Caliente. He was going to open the second location, and he offered me the assistant manager job there. I came in and really didn't work too closely with the beer. I ran the kitchen, but that was when I got exposure to like local craft beer. He had a dedication to always have 3 or 4 taps of just local Pittsburgh beer, and that was the first time I saw local favorites here like Grist House and Brew Gentleman and Hitchhiker, and that's when things really, really took off. And it was like, this is what I want to do now. Homebrewing was a very avid hobby before that, but I was like, I can get paid to work around beer. Like this is really cool.
Well, I'm impressed that your professional experience in pizza then led to beer, because those really are an interconnected.
Yes, they speak to each other.
Experience there.
Yeah, they do go hand in hand. It's not necessarily a career track that most people would say.
No.
From the world of pizza to the world of beer, but they're good friends, pizza and beer.
Yes.
They got along. They got mutual
hang out
acquaintances. Yeah.
They'd friend each other on Facebook for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so then you were working in this beer bar, and then you sort of, I mean, when I first met you, if I'm not mistaken, were you still with City Brew Tour sort of as a guide part-time in the Pittsburgh area?
Yes.
Was that your first relationship? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I started 2017. My wife and I saw a tour out, and we were like, that would be a cool thing to do. 2 weeks later, I was applying for a job for the company.
Amazing.
Went even further than just taking a tour with the company. Came on as a part-time guide here in my hometown of Pittsburgh. Ran tours here for a couple years, and in those couple years met you, and have just kind of I found my way into human resources with the company. I do not have a human resources background whatsoever. Eventually,
did you get like a human resources for dummies book or something?
Essentially, yeah. I have a Sure membership. I pay for a Sure membership. Shout out to all the human resource people that know what that is. About 2.5 years after being with the company, I started to see, we were growing over 50 employees total. And it was like, this is the time that we really need someone to step up into this position and do these initiatives that will make this the best place to work. Like, we all agreed, like, we have a very cool job. We were teaching people about beer. We were giving brewery tours. We were talking about beer and getting paid for it, and getting to have this close relationship with the local beer industry. And it was like, well, how do we take that to the next level? And to me, the obvious next move was to have someone move into the role of HR and approach that from a employee first mindset. And after a couple months of kicking my feet, I was like, maybe it's me. I guess that person's me. I want to be that person. And I made up the title Chief Personnel Officer for myself, and they graciously accepted that. And I have been happily serving in this role for 2.5 years now as the Chief Personnel Officer, overseeing our strategic discussions from an employee first standpoint, but also doing, oh my God, a lot of different things involved with human resources and company culture. And now I have, in the past 2 months, taken over as the host of Brews Less Traveled, and that has gotten me back closer to the industry. And I get paid to ride around to different cities and talk to people that make awesome beer, and just it could not be better. It's wonderful.
That is outstanding.
It is,
now,
yeah.
even with all of this, do you still find time to homebrew yourself?
God, no.
Is that still? Oh no!
Oh God,
Okay.
no! God, no! I'm in my office right now. If we could turn the camera around, you could see I have my shelf here set up with all of my brew equipment, and it's all organized like I'm still going to brew. But there is a measurable level of dust on there to where you could stick a roller in, and the dust would probably puff up. Because I also have a 2-year-old daughter, and if you ask me when the last time I homebrewed was, it was about 2 years ago. So
Yeah.
Yes, that plus all the travel and being the ultimate hype man for unknown brew cities, I'm sure, does take up a little bit of extra time.
it does. And like, homebrewing is so wonderful. It's great to make your own beers, but like, you really got to be able to set aside like 4 to 6 hours to like really commit to that. And that's just really hard with a child, and really hard when my wife takes care of the child while I'm working, and getting to like pursue my passion through work, for me to be like, hey, could you also watch her so I could take 6 hours and brew 10 gallons of beer for myself? Yeah, thanks. That would be great. Like, I don't think that's going to go over
that's
well.
a tricky negotiation, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So in the Pittsburgh area, I'm trying to think if we've had any Pittsburgh beers on the Beer Cast, but if someone is visiting Pittsburgh, given that you are like the guy to go to for unique beer cities, I know you've got one tonight, but where are the places that people like should go, because that's where people go, and where are the places that are a little bit more under the radar that might be a beer nerd's, fantasy?
I love the 2-part question. Just love a two-part question in general, and specifically love this 2-part question. The places to go, Grist House. I live very close to a place called Grist House, which is probably one of, if not the most popular brewery in Pittsburgh. They have a great outdoor area. Their brand is very outdoor focused, and across the board, just exceptional beers, IPAs, dark beers, lagers, great atmosphere there, great taproom staff. They have Lucre faucets, so they got the side pull check style faucets. So if you really want to nerd out and like get something with 3 fingers of foam on it, you can do that. They're wonderful. There's also Dancing Gnome, which is kind of like the hype brewery, I guess, if you had to point the finger at one of the breweries in Pittsburgh to be the hype brewery. They are that, and across the board, again, they knock everything out. And they just opened a brand new taproom space that is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. 20-foot tall ceilings, and just this great atmosphere in there. And they have a Kolsch night now, where somebody just walks around with a tote that I can't remember what that thing is called. Yeah, like
it translates as crown. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah,
We'll have to do it for Huck-Ups next week. But yeah, exactly.
The Kolsch crown. So those are 2. There's so many great ones. Like, people go to the Church Brew Works a lot, because that is like a church that was converted into a brewery, and like the altar of the church is the brew house.
Oh,
So there's a
nice.
I think I heard you guys
novelty
talk
aspect.
about that one on the Pittsburgh, or was it you? But I think it was the Pittsburgh month of Brews Less Traveled. I definitely heard about that one. That sounds cool.
Yeah. So there's a lot of those places, and people know those, and they're wonderful, and you won't be disappointed going to there. But there's smaller places that I think that are better serving as an embodiment of like what I see as the Pittsburgh beer. And two of those are Allegheny City Brewing Company, which is in the Deutschtown neighborhood. Really small tap room, sits like 40 people, but they're doing great stuff across the board. They always have a nice varied menu. They'll have a red IPA. They'll have Pilsner. They'll have Kolsch. They'll have a barrel-aged stout. They'll have a Oktoberfest. Like, they have a very nice varied menu, and they believe in community so much. They don't want to be anything more than that neighborhood brewery in Deutschtown. They want to be that neighborhood's like gathering space that also makes exceptional beer. And I just love that about them. The owners are fantastic. Shout out to Al, Matt, and Amy. And they brew great beer and they create great atmosphere. And like, if you're downtown Pittsburgh, it's one of the closest breweries to downtown Pittsburgh. So absolutely pop over to there. And another one would be Trace.
Yeah, I was going to say the glassware belies your connection to them.
Yes.
So
Trace is great. They have an exceptional brew staff. The guy that brews there brewed at Trillium, and he interned at Cantillon, and has quite the background to him, so he knows his stuff. He brews great beers. They have a focus on a Saison program, which is something that we could definitely use more, both here in Pittsburgh and at large in the industry.
Everywhere.
Yeah, every city should have a Saison focused brewery. And every night they have some kind of event. They have great drag queen bingo nights. They have great they'll just turn their taproom space into what is seemingly a dance hall, and they'll have a DJ come in. They open at 8 a.m. in the morning because they have a wonderful coffee program too. So you could go in there, start your day, have a nice coffee, get an espresso, do some work, and then at whenever you feel it's justifiable to do so, you could get a beer too.
Transition over to beer. I love the brewery as like workspace. I've got Evil Twin in my neighborhood in Dumbo, which also we were, unfortunately, during the pandemic, we lost all of our coffee shops except for a Starbucks, and you know how that goes. So Evil Twin, when they opened, they started with beers and then immediately brought on a coffee program, and that has just brought everybody out of their apartments and in as the like ultimate go-to spot. And I'd say people start beers at around noon. I don't know if Pittsburgh is starting that early.
Oh, I mean that's if you know anything about Pittsburgh culture, that would be late for us actually. We have an entire culture of well, you know, Pittsburgh was known as a steel manufacturing city. So we would have all the people working third shift, and traditionally all our bars opened at 7 or 8 in the morning because the steel workers needed somewhere to go
After
get
work,
a pint after working. And that's also how we got the other thing that we're most famous for, besides steel. The fries with the sandwiches with fries on them.
Oh yes.
That's
Primanti Brothers, is that what it is?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, there we go.
Primanti Brothers was a sandwich for the steelworkers when they got off of work until 8 in the morning. You go and get an Iron City and a sandwich with French fries on it. And then you're ready to go.
Who has time to eat a burger and fries? Just eat it all at once.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But Brian, I've
that's efficiency.
Like 2 more questions, mostly just because at the end of this we have a special ritual we'll be going through, and I want to fully inform ourselves with this. So of all your brewing experiences, what beers that you brewed are you most proud of? And as far as your personal preference to drink, do you have a preferred style? And you can have more than one answer to that question.
So out of the beers I'm most proud of that when I brewed, I really nailed down an English pub ale, like ordinary bitter recipe. Just like 4.5%, super balanced, nice light tea character from the English hops. And I dialed that recipe in. That was one of the last recipes I worked on before I started a family. And like I really got that beer dialed in. And I just was really proud of that beer. Never got to enter it into competitions. I did one other beer that I was really proud of was a like New England style pale ale that I did enter into competitions. Got really, really good feedback. But as anybody that homebrews knows, pale ale and IPA are very heavily competitive categories in homebrew. So I didn't win anything from it, but I got really good feedback on it.
That's the most important part.
Yeah. Honestly, like you get really, really good feedback. If you want to grow as a brewer, as a home brewer, as a serious brewer, enter into competitions because those people tasting that beer are some of the best beer tasters in your local area, and they're going to give you the best feedback you can get, honestly. They're not going to be jerks about it and be like, this is terrible. They will actually give suggestions on how to fix your beer.
The beer community is is a very welcoming place. I'd say the deeper I've jumped into it, we all just want to have a good beer. It seems like is the rule of thumb around here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then part 2 of the question.
Yes.
I do have 2 answers to my favorite styles of beer. If I Pilsner is my favorite style of beer. I mean, I will always be a hophead at heart, but if I'm gonna drink a style every day, it's going to be Pilsner. The style I fawn over the most and I get the most excited about is Lambic, because I believe there's nothing more beautiful in the beer world than Lambic. It is just the ultimate expression of the natural achievements of beer. It takes a brewer to make beer, but it also takes some very natural processes to make any kind of beer. I mean, you need to let another living organism come in and turn that sugar water into alcohol. And with Lambic, you're letting whatever organism is in the air around you come in and completely take the wheel out of your hands and ferment that beer for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And there's just something so beautiful about that.
Is there a specific flavor of Lambic that you're especially drawn to?
Probably the funk, but there is like a hop character in certain Lambics. They use aged hops specifically, and there is like there's a very particular hop character that comes from those aged hops, and it's like bordering on the line of funky. So it's hard to describe, but Cantillon does it very, very well. Just their straight Cantillon goose has a really nice hop hit to it, but it's not hops that you're used to. It's not bitter, it's not floral, it's not aromatic, it's
I'm glad I asked, because I mostly associate lambics with the fruit that is their adjunct. So I'm like, but it's interesting. So focusing on the funk, interesting. So there's funky, there's sessionable.
We don't have a representation of the lambics in our Beer Venger sphere right now. We've got some sour love, but no representation of lambics.
All right. Well, we'll let all that sink in, and we'll talk about our weekend beer, and then we'll circle back and see what emerges from all of this. How's your weekend beer been, Beer Wonder?
Well, I mean, the biggest event for me in my weekend beer, of course, was we did say fond farewell to our dear Cider Girl and Hophead Huck as they made their way to the West Coast. Yeah. We had a final night with them at the Pony Bar, which had been our go-to for a while. Yeah. And we decidedly closed the place down a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we're still up, but it was one of my later nights I've had in a while.
Yes.
I think
it was a long one, and I will say shout out to Dan and our fabulous bartender team there who took very good care of us that evening. Yes. Dan who accidentally gave me a full pour of what was supposed to have been a short pour for a 12% double IPA.
Are you sure it was an accident?
Shout out.
Well, we're gonna find out. I let's say I don't remember much.
Because what's funny is after he poured that for you, he offered to buy me one as well. And then since I either it's because he just seen him do it for you, or because he just wanted to, he said, and I told him what I wanted, which was an 11-ounce beer. And he said, can I supersize that for you? I'm like, you certainly may.
I'm not going to argue. Never argue with that.
Yeah.
But since I did have a Torch and Crown beer on the beer cast today, I did want to shout out a really cool panel that they are doing on Wednesday, May 11th at 7 p.m., which is the Beer in Manhattan panel, which is going to have a number of different people, including Garrett Oliver, who of course is got his start making beer at the Manhattan Beer Company, but we now know from Brooklyn breweries. Kirby Shire, who founded Zip City Brewing, which Captain you may remember.
Zip City.
They were part of the sort of early brew pub scene in Manhattan in the 90s. And Chris O'Leary, who is Brew York,
New York,
himself. Yeah. Exactly. So it looks like it's going to be a really fun event. So if you happen to be in Gotham City, definitely check them out.
Now, that's on a Wednesday in May, correct?
It is on a Wednesday. It is actually, I believe, on the captain's birthday.
Yeah, so I'll be hanging with Brian that night.
Exactly.
But that sounds like a lot of fun.
Is the coolest person in the world.
You've met him?
I have not. No, I follow him and live vicariously through his Instagram. But that guy just seems like the coolest. He knows beer. Yeah. He's like an exceptional cook. He knows wine. He dresses fantastically. He speaks exceptionally. Does he do anything poorly? Like
no.
He's just the ultimate person. Garrett Oliver's wonderful.
Yes.
Very cool.
Aces to him. Amazing guy. So, well, if you're not listening to, or you're not joining the Brews Less Traveled live stream that evening, definitely swing by. But then catch it on the podcast.
Yes.
Because,
also want to mention something else about Torch and Crown. They had a funny thing recently. We've talked before about certain big companies being overly litigious when they think their brand is being stolen. Torch and Crown had a one-off coffee porter called Grind. And apparently there is an obscure coffee espresso liqueur, I think, of some sort that is owned by a large liquor company called Sazerac. So Sazerac. So Torch and Crown got a letter of cease and desist from them. And if you look on their Instagram, or if you need a bigger thing, I think it's on their website, they wrote a very funny, extensive letter explaining why. Well, it was a one-off beer, so we will be ceasing and desisting, but I really don't think anyone was going to consider your garbage liqueur, confuse that with our beer. Apparently the guy, not only had he never heard of it, but he made an active search to find it, and he found like a tiny little like airport-sized bottle in a liquor store somewhere in Woodside, Queens. So it's not like Grind liqueur is really like their brand is going to be damaged by a one-off beer, but that's the world we're living in these days.
Did you see the smaller brewery, which I guess I should have done prep for and wrote the name of this brewery down, that sued Stone? I don't know if you've talked about this on the podcast.
Oh, I did not know.
We have not. No,
but
breaking
Stone,
news here.
Released a beer. They released some new hazy IPA, juicy IPA, and their marketing around it is all like "keep it juicy" or "keeping it juicy." And the smaller brewery sued them because they were like, "We've been using "keeping it juicy" or "keep it juicy," whatever it is, for this many years now." And I feel like Stone has just opened themselves up to that with the lawsuit winning against Keystone, which like I don't know. I'm gonna root for them again't Keystone and Anheuser-Busch, but like
yes, exactly, of course.
I feel like they kind of opened themselves up to that now with we're going to be the litigious company, and this is more of that.
Well, yeah, and it seems fair if someone is bigger than someone. I mean, because in reverse, it does seem fair, especially if it's in the same industry. I think the deal that Torch and Crown was making was like, look, this is a one-off beer. No one, even though you're a big giant company that can afford expensive lawyers, no one really knows about your Grind espresso liqueur. It's just being petty. But if you're a small craft brewery that's been doing something for years, and a bigger craft brewery says, I mean, granted, they may be small enough that Stone hadn't heard of them, so it might have been a genuine mistake. And the response should be, okay, sorry, we won't do that anymore. It's that simple.
It's possible the brewery was Sycamore Brewing in Charlotte, North Carolina, and as a lot of people know, Stone is headquartered in San Diego and is one of the largest breweries in the country. Yeah.
Yep.
Certainly.
Right. So it could have been that this place in North Carolina was under their radar, so it's their responsibility to make it right. Another thing we talked about a while back about we've been doing this since summer of 2020, And one of the things we lamented at the time was that this incredible new brewery that McKellar had at City Field in Queens unfortunately had to shut down as a result of the pandemic. Well, that space has been taken over by a new small but vibrant brewery in Brooklyn called Ebbs.
Yes.
And they,
in fact, I believe it was the Globehopper, you and I, who did their pre-opening day. We happened to be there.
we did.
To just
not
make
in,
sure it was going to be okay.
not in City Field, but we went to the one at their location in Brooklyn. Yeah.
Yes, to their Brooklyn location. Yes, we inspected it to make sure it was going to be up to Beer Venture standards.
Yeah.
Which is what you do as a beer
And
vendor.
I'm not sure if they're going to be open when games aren't going on. I hope they will be. But what they are specifying on their website is that they will be open 2 hours before and 2 hours after every Mets game out there at City Field. So,
Is that surprising for two New Yorkers that a local brewery went in there? Because my guess is that a bigger place would have went in there.
Well, City Field has been very committed to local beers. If you go to Yankee Stadium, it's all Anheuser-Busch. It's all big stuff. But City Field really did make a commitment when they reopened to local food and local brews. In fact, one of the first times I went to the new City Field when it reopened, I remember going to their beer area and being shocked at how many local breweries were there. It was actually tricky to get a Budweiser. You had to work to get there. So it's nice that they that there is a local brew spot going in there, because if you're a baseball fan, the Mets are sort of the perpetual underdogs, and so it's nice that they're supporting the hometown kids along the way.
And
if you go
ahead.
Go to the Steelers, what do you drink there?
Iron City, yeah, probably.
Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay,
I'd also say on the vast spectrum of breweries, even McKellar is relatively small as far as the vast thing. I mean, there are other reasons why they've become problematic, and maybe have been for a long time. That is a whole other podcast. But relatively speaking, it seems like even though McKellar and Evil Twin are twin brothers, McKellar might be the more evil of the twins. We're not really quite sure there. But yeah, so Ebbs is definitely smaller, a lot smaller than McKellar. So it was kind of cool to see that they worked something out. And I hope that part of what they did is that maybe their rent isn't as much in the off season, because I almost felt like that's part of why McKellar couldn't survive the interim, was because maybe they were still charging them full rent while when there was no baseball. But anyway, good luck to Ebbs. I hope to visit out there sometime soon.
Yes. Well, now that things are subsiding a little bit, I missed my base. I went to a Yankees game last year. I haven't been out to Shea Stadium, or to the City Field, excuse me, in a bit. So.
Yeah, actually, Brian, I think to your point, yes, actually, it's not that surprising that City Field would have a craft brew there. It would be more surprising if they did it at Yankee Stadium. Yankee Stadium definitely has much more of a corporate vibe than City Field. It's funny that even though the one is named after a corporation, but
yeah, you wouldn't think it that way. I was very disappointed because, to speak New York related, in JFK, I can't remember the name of it, but there was a very, very good beer bar that was always all local stuff, all craft, and now it's just a Blue Point bar, and it's all Anheuser-Busch stuff, and it's just so disappointing to see, because there's so much good beer in New York City. It's always been known as like the import spot. All the good beer flows through the East Coast, through New York City. But there's really, really good brewers in New York City nowadays. And to just see a good spot like that turn into a Blue Point spot is disappointing. So it's good to hear that a local spot is taking the place of McKellar and City Field.
Yeah.
Our water's hefty, so I'll say that much. So, well, we do have a very sacred ritual.
We do.
Very sacred. That tends to end our beer cast, and that is, of course, the naming of our newest Beer Venger.
Yes.
So I have been making... First, I want to know, Brian, is there a name that calls to you?
Absolutely.
A Beer Venger...
Absolutely not.
Okay,
no,
great.
No.
So I have been making a few notes based on things we heard from you, and of course, we can take this to the social medias, we can take this to wherever, but thoughts I had were... now, a number of these were taking a slightly evil turn, and I just want you to know I don't think of you in an evil way. But it seemed that some of these things were coming to me. So first, I thought we have the Bitter Baron.
The Bitter
You
Baron.
own all the bitterness.
Okay.
Tannic Man. Hop Eye. Just to get that in there. The Ordinary Bitter Kid. and Lord Lambic.
Ooh, Lord Lambic.
Oh,
A few of these were now. Here's the thing. Now, the Beer Avenger is to choose his own or their own name, and again, we don't have Huck here, who is truly the king of this.
That's
So
true.
I am just filling in at a solid C+, in his stead. But are any of these names calling to you, or does it inspire a Beer Avenger name for you?
I have to say, I love a good acronym, and OBK is just wonderful. The Ordinary Bitter Kid. I feel like I could put some
All right.
put some stank on that when I say it too. The Ordinary Bitter Kid.
OBK.
All right.
I
I was trying to think of like Session of the Lambs, but that's not
That has
really
a-
a name so much.
That has a Pittsburgh reference. Dude,
Okay.
Oh, that's good.
the-
That is good.
Silence of the Lambs was shot in Pittsburgh. Actually, the scene where the FBI thinks they're breaking into
Oh, that fake out scene.
Buffalo's. Yes, that was shot 200 feet from the house where I grew up.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. While they were shooting that, little baby Brian was just right up the street there, probably sleeping.
Good work.
All right. Well, yeah, I think I was thinking the Session because the Pilsner, you like the Pilsners, it's a sessionable beer. But if you're attached to, but if Ordinary Bitter Kid speaks to you so well, OBK it is, I think.
I do
Well,
like it.
Okay. Well, welcome to the Beer Avenger sphere.
OBK,
the
yeah.
Ordinary Bitter Kid. OBK is in the house.
He is.
Mhm.
All right. Well, so again, thank you so much for being here, Brian. Thank all of you for listening. And if you want more of this, listen to the Brews Less Traveled podcast for the entire month of May, when either us or our alter egos or some
Roommates.
version of that will be on there. Also, wanted to just say, to be careful out there. We all sometimes we're all often tempted to talk about as if we're living in a post-pandemic world, and we're in a more safe than we were for many of us. But I recently had COVID, and a lot of people are. I think it was that party I went to with it was Kamala Harris, Stephen Colbert, and Eric Adams were all there.
I know.
And
You are so fancy.
oh,
Captain.
geez, I'm not going to say which one I don't trust, but we had a good time. But I think, and then I got it, and a couple days later, when I didn't know I had it, I think I gave it to one of my favorite bartenders. I mean, the good part of all of this is that I only had like one bad day. It put me out of commission for like a week plus, but it was do everything you can to protect yourself and to protect others. But it's out there and you might get it, and don't be too afraid of it, because most of, knock on whatever, most of us are going to be okay, and we'll see where this phase leads. But any place you're supposed to wear a mask, and maybe even go a little above that. I don't know. I don't even know what to tell the people anyway. But be aware it's not done.
Nobody's wearing masks in the airport. It was crazy.
Well, in New York
flew
they
earlier
are.
this
There
week.
you go.
I think in New York they're still requiring it. Yeah.
In Gotham, it's demanded, but no, I've heard reports from other places that it is a little bit of the Wild West out there again. So
Yeah. So you be careful, Brian, in your traveling with less brews.
Keep a COVID test handy.
Oh yeah,
as it should be. Well done.
I used all.
If you haven't gotten your second government issued one, make sure you do that. COVIDtest.gov.
Well,
Oh,
also
they're
no,
gonna
I
second
have
round?
to tell-
Oh yeah, you get two. You get two now. You get two sets.
Not only that,
so-
Beer Wonder, I have to give you credit. You turned me onto a website that has a lot of great information about what to do in New York, and I found a local library where I could go and just say I want free COVID tests, and they just handed them to me. So, then the whole list of that is on that website. What was it? It was the one you were telling me about where I might be able to get special drugs. What
Yeah,
was the name?
nyc.gov/COVID. It's
Okay.
New York City's easy like that. But yes, the libraries are handing them out. There's plenty of places on the corner. Take care of yourselves, but also support your local breweries, because honestly, they've been through a lot
Yes.
in the last 2 years, almost 3 now years.
Yes, over tipping season is not over.
Nope. Captain and I are very guilty of that ourselves,
Yes,
especially
yes.
of late.
Humble
so-
brag, I think.
Well, but also, like, let's say my tips from all of my internet beer drinking tend to wind up going to my favorite bartenders, which, is how the economy works.
It is. All right. So any other business do we have, do you think?
Brian, any business on your end?
Not really. I read that the PepsiCo is getting ready to make more alcoholic beverages. They ran. They already tried to do their Mountain Dew thing, and there's more coming from that regard. But other than that, and the fact that I'm excited to possibly get an alcoholic version of Baja Blast soon.
I believe our Nutpool will be very excited to hear about that. Say what you will about
Say
Nutpool.
what you will about Nutpool.
Yes, he does enjoy it. He does enjoy a Baja Blast, and he does enjoy alcohol. So you put those two things together.
Yes. No, I actually
Can't go wrong.
Speaking of combinations, I really enjoyed listening to your episode last week, Brian, about cannabis and beer together. The more that becomes, it's funny because I have a little bit of a foothold in the cannabis friendly breweries that aren't necessarily able to put it in there yet. The Sweetwater and Green Flash out in California have both been purchased by a Canadian cannabis company. So presumably once that becomes more possible in those places, it's all called Tilray. Has bought both of those as well. So that's part of their getting their foothold into it when it becomes easier. So once those breweries can start having cannabis-infused beers, hopefully they will.
Wow, I didn't know that. I should have done better research and covered that in the podcast, because I know Sweetwater did the terpene.
Yeah, you have a
beers.
2-year-old. It's fine.
It's a built-in excuse.
Yes, but you talked about a lot of the aspects of it. So if you want to shoehorn that into one of our May episodes, that's fine. I have some
bring
stuff.
the hookups to you.
Yeah.
It's fine.
All right. Well, thanks again, Brian. This has been a wonderful hour spent with you. Glad to learn a little bit more about you, and come back anytime.
You mean the Ordinary Bitter Kid?
Yes, OBK.
As OBK shall forever now be known.
I actually think it has to be that because for me, Ordinary Bitter Kid just has way too many syllables. But OBK sounds really cool. As he said, an acronym. You can't beat a good acronym.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe once. Maybe the introduction is the Ordinary Bitter
Absolutely.
Kid,
Yeah. I mean,
and then you move into OBK.
I, who introduces myself every week as Captain Porter Brownstone, is complaining about syllables. So, glass houses. All right. And if any of you out there have any comments, questions, queries, haikus, hopefully no death threats, you can
I'd be down with haikus.
Yeah, you can reach out to us at thebeervengers@gmail.com. We're on the socials at thebeervengers. That's Facebook, Instagram, and for the time being, Twitter. Where that's going, I'm not sure. If a certain orange individual shows back up on there because of the new ownership, we may not be around there for long. But for the moment, you can find us on Twitter, and but the other places too. All right. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Beer Wonder, and thank all the Beer Vengers out. Oh, hey. I thought he was on a plane to California, but
so did I. But here he is. Shocking.
Huck, welcome. You want to play us out? Oh, he's nodding. All right, thanks, you guys,
Oh, good.
and we'll see everyone next time.
With the beer Vengers, beer Vengers, beer Vengers.
We're the Beer Vengers.